There are quite a bit of financial activities that people have outside of the U.S. that require extra reporting here, and that catches a lot of people by surprise. A couple of common things that we run into, one very common one is a foreign pension plan or retirement plan. So if somebody has worked abroad, or maybe they live abroad and work abroad, and that employer has a pension plan for them, they may not do anything with that in the other country, and it's, that account is growing tax deferred, and they're not going to pay tax on it until they start taking distributions. But in most cases, the U.S. doesn't recognize those retirement plans the same way that they would a U.S. retirement plan. And so it's actually considered a foreign trust, which requires two separate forms. And there's also not that same income deferral in a lot of cases. So they may be paying tax on the U.S. on earnings in those retirement accounts that they aren't paying tax on in the foreign country. So that adds a lot of frustration, I think, for our people who are living abroad or working abroad. They're living life, they have financial activities going on, and they may have a brokerage account, and that broker may have them invested in mutual funds in that country, just like a broker would here in the U.S. But they fall under this whole separate tax regime that I don't think was intended to catch mutual funds, but it does. And the filing complexity on that can be very difficult. It can also trigger really high amounts of tax depending on whether certain elections are made on those funds and the timeliness of all of that. It's pretty common for people to pay tax of 50% or more when they sell those mutual funds. I've seen as high as 80%. So yeah, there are things that people may not think to tell us about just because it's something that's normal, and not a taxable deal in that other country, but we may have to treat it differently here. Fortunately, IRS has come out with some programs recently. They've amended some programs that they've had in the past, and they've put some new ones in place to help people get caught up without breaking the bank. And the two programs that we really see a lot with this right now are the streamlined programs. And they have one for people who are resident of the United States, and they have one for people who are non-resident. And that non-resident one is really nice because if you can meet all of the provisions of that program, there's no penalty. You just file 6 years of FBARs, you file 3 years of tax returns. You explain to the IRS why you hadn't been filing, and if they accept you into it, then there's no penalty. You just move on with life and you start filing every year. The one for residents of the United States isn't quite as nice. There's a 5% penalty there. But when you compare that to the offshore voluntary disclosure program that's been around for several years, since 2008, you're looking at a 27.5% to a 50% penalty, depending on what's going on. And so it gets very expensive very fast. We have one client going through it right now. We've looked at it for other clients, and it really comes into play when either there was an intention to not report foreign income or not report foreign assets, or the facts and circumstances just look bad and it looks like there was an intention for that. It's a more difficult program because it requires 8 years rather than less years under the streamlined, and you pretty much need to have an attorney in place because you're dealing with the criminal side of the IRS. So we do have an attorney that specializes in that. That's all he does. He's out of Baltimore, surprisingly enough. But he's really good, and he's the one that we bring in on any of this kind of stuff. Probably what keeps them up at night is wondering what they've missed, or knowing that they've missed something and not knowing how to deal with it, or reading in the news all of this FATCA stuff and not knowing how it applies to them. And that's what we're here for. We're here to help you get caught up and to help you get compliant and to help you sleep at night.